Okay, good morning, class. We were doing the chapter Human Resources, where we talked of population density and how it is unevenly distributed throughout India and in other parts of the world as well. We talked of densely populated areas, which are basically the areas where we find intensive agriculture, where the climate is warm, where the soil is fertile, and there are people, the mineral resources, development of industries, and suitable climate for human habitation. So those are the areas which are densely populated areas. Then we talked of moderately populated areas, which are basically confined to people living in a scattered way. Those are the plateau areas, then the Eastern Europe, then southern part of Russia. All these places we talked of. Then the Deccan Plateau of India, central China. These are the places which are moderately populated. Then we talked of sparsely populated, where we talked of the regions which are hot deserts or cold deserts, mountain ranges, and we gave the examples. Then we also talked of factors which affect the distribution of population. In that we talked of the geographical factors, the social, cultural, and economic factors. Then we talked of the population growth, which is one of the causes why the population has expanded. Then we have seen population change, which may be due to lack of health facilities, unavailability of sufficient food, or low productivity of food crops. The basic components of population they change with time because of the birth rate and death rate. We talked of the natural growth rate, that is the difference between the birth and the growth rate is called the natural growth rate. We also discussed about migration, which means moving from one place to another. That means a large shifting of population from one particular place to another is called migration. And there are two types of migration: e-migration, that is out migration. That means the country where you're residing, you're moving away to another place or another country is called e-migration. The other name is out migration. Then we talked of immigration, where the people from any other country come and reside in that country, in the other country. That is called immigration. Like from India, our country, if we go to another country, that is called e-migration. That means we are moving out. Now, supposing we are going to Canada and settling there. So Canada, the people in Canada will call it immigration. That means you all have shifted from your country to their country. That is called immigration or migration, in migration. Now, we talked of all this, and now we come on to the new heading called population composition. That means what is the population made up of? To understand the role of population as a resource, we need to know more about their qualities in terms of age, sex, literacy level, health condition, occupation, and income level. Please underline all these things. These are the important determinants of population composition. Population composition refers to the structure of the population. What is it made up of? The composition of population helps us to know how many are male or females, which age group they belong to, how educated they are, and what type of occupation they are employed in, what their income levels, what is their income levels, and health conditions, etc. are. So all these grounds they define the population composition in a particular country. Now, age group will take up the first heading. Now, the composition strongly influences the rate of growth and has profound effects on the social and economic conditions under which a population lives on the basis of physiological and economic activities. The population is generally classified into three age groups: the young, the adults, and the old. Now, how can we judge it? Now, we judge it basically because of the number of people employed in a particular area. Like obviously, if there are mining fields and there are a number of people employed, we automatically come to know that yes, there are younger people uh, present in that particular country more because the population is more indulged into hardworking activities like mining and digging, etc. All this. Okay. So the age group also is a very important factor in making the components or the population composition. Okay. Next is the sex ratio. That means how many males are there and how many females are there in the population. The sex ratio is most commonly expressed as the number of females per thousand of males. It should be balanced, but we find variation in sex ratio in different countries due to different reasons. For example, in European countries, generally the number of females are more than the number of males, whereas in India, sex ratio is low due to few social causes. It is only 933 per thousand males. That means there are lesser females as compared to males. If there are 1,000 males in a particular area, there are just 933 females in that area too. So this tells you the imbalanced sex ratio, okay? Whereas in European countries, female population is more than that of the male population. Next heading is the literacy. Literacy has been defined as the ability to read and write with understanding. That means your potentials to read and write will call you literate, educated, okay, padha likha. Literacy reflects the socio-economic and cultural setup of a nation, ethnic groups, or community. It has been observed that is higher in urban areas than in rural areas. It is also more among males than females. So if we talk of India, we know that in India, in many houses, there are situations where they do not allow the female child to get education. Now, this is a drawback for a society or for any country because the population which is literate can be indulged into many educated socio-economic activities. Economic means money related activities. Okay, so that depends on your literacy. Then we talk of population pyramid. An interesting way of studying the population composition of a country is by looking at the population pyramid, also called an aged sex pyramid. A population pyramid shows, now you can see the chart next to you. On the same page, they are showing you the population and they are trying to show it in a representative way, on a graphical way by showing you the pyramid. Okay, now it shows the total population divided into various age groups from 5 to 9 years, then 10 to 14 years. You can see these distributions and the percentage of total population subdivided into males and females. So in India, you can say the males and females, which is now gradually turning balanced. Okay, you can see it now. It is more or less balanced with a little more towards the male side. Okay, it is trying to maintain the balance. Okay, and here you can see 60 plus males and females, and in the last purple bar, you can see the number of males and females born between 0 to 4 years. Can you see that? So they are telling you, showing you the percentage of each age group. Then the percentage of total population is then subdivided into males and females in each of those groups. Then the shape of the population pyramid tells us about the people. The number of children below 15 years are shown at the bottom and reflects the level of births. Can you see the number of children born? Just telling you the birth rate. Okay. The size of the top shows the aged people above 65 years and reflects the number of deaths. So you can see the pyramid, the aged people, 60 plus, the pyramid has gone to a cone shape, okay, because of the death rates at the age of 65. That means a very few people reach the age of 65 and the death rate is quite high. The size of the top shows the aged people above 65 and reflects the number of deaths. The population pyramid also tells us how many dependents are there in a country. Now, obviously, till the age group of, you can say, 19, from 0 till 19, it tells you, show, can you see the flat green line in the below the downer portion of the pyramid? It shows you that the population dependent on the earning people is more. Okay. The population pyramid of a country in which both birth and death rates are high is broad at the base and rapidly narrows towards the top due to the birth of many children, and a large percentage of them die in their infancy. So, Mike, switch off your mic. So this shows you that if there's a death that
पागल
the
है
infant, then the pyramid would have not been in this shape because of the birth rate being high and also the death rate. But here we see that there's gradual growth and then there's a peak. Okay. The pyramid is broad in the younger age groups because more infants survive to adulthood due to decreasing death rates. Such population contains a relatively large number of young people, and which means a strong and expanding labor force. That means a young country. Basically, if an infant is able to live and survive, then the pyramid would not be not declining at a very good speed. In the chart which we are seeing, there's a natural and gradual upward movement. Okay, so this shows that the country has good advanced medical technology and the people are flourishing well. Then they tell you future distribution of population. That means in future what would happen? The distribution of the whole world's population during the next few decades is expected to remain similar to the present pattern. The main reason may be that the international law and politics do not permit free migration from one country to another. That means, please remember these points, why they are saying that the population is going to remain the same for a pretty more time. It is because the international law and the politics of the other countries where the migrations are more prominent, they have put up the they have stopped the permit of free migration. That means you cannot just anyhow just shift from one country to another. Like in Bangladesh, the people were shifting to India, finding it a better place. So they have stopped this now. They have to get a visa and a passport, and everything has to be documented properly, and the enrollment has to be made. Only then the migration is possible. Then, secondly, the sparsely populated areas have adverse climate and poor resource potential. Now, the areas which are sparsely populated, they have not such suitable climate, like the hilly regions where the flocks do not follow the permanent settlement. They follow the movement from in the summers. They shift up to the higher altitudes of the hills, and in the winters they come back down to the lower altitudes. Now, this tells you that the sparsely situated areas, the sparsely populated areas, would not be the same for a pretty long time. Okay. Now, the cold climate. Sorry, I missed out the line. Secondly, yeah. Then prospects for a large scale expansion of population in the cold, arid, or hot and wet climates seem to be dim. And there are very less chances that population would expand in the area where there is intensive cold or there is excessively hot or wet climate. So these sparsely situated areas, populated areas would remain the same. Then the cold climates with their short growing seasons and long distances from existing commercial and industrial regions probably have limited potentials for their agriculture or industry. So they've given you the reason because these cold climates, they will not automatically have lot to offer to the people that they will start moving. So they will remain the same. Now, in the arid and desert areas also, the prospects of large population, agglomeration are bleak. That means accumulation of population. That means moving of people towards these hot deserts is also a very rare possibility. So, taking that into account, owing to the non-availability of water for drinking and irrigation because of the lack of population, lack of facilities in these areas, the population will not agglomeration, agglomerate in those areas. Okay, will not move in cluster there. Okay. Now, the equatorial rainforests are also not very attractive regions for human habitation. Population in these areas may grow only if agriculture is developed by large scale. Felling of forests, felling of trees may be disastrous from the world's climatic point of view. And all of you know that it is happening in these times where the people are more into cutting of trees. Then we come up to optimum population. The distribution pattern and density of population are highly unevenly distributed over the Earth's surface, and the same is the case with natural resources. The pressure of population on the resources, resources base and the available technology determine whether the region is overpopulated or underpopulated. In other words, the extent to which resources are used and the way in which they are used determine whether an area is underpopulated or overpopulated. A country is said to have an optimum population when the number of people is in balance with the available resources. Optimum condition can only be maintained if exploitation of new resources or the development of other forms of employment can keep pace with increase in population. So here they are telling you about optimum population of an area where they talk of the pressure of the population on the resources available in that particular land. If it is balanced, then the optimum population could be maintained. But if there is the resources will definitely not increase. But if their consumption of the resources is overdone, then it is called an overpopulated area. Okay, and this determines the population increase. So to it is just a little bit left. Let us finish it. When we talk of population problems, the growing pressure of population on resources based especially on agriculture, land has created many socio-economic, cultural, ecological, and environmental problems. The population problems vary in space and time and differ from region to region. These problems may be more systematically examined if we take the problems of the developed and developing countries separately. Now, we all know that if we take into account the countries which are still developing in the process of development, they would be far backward than the population which is developing. That is advanced countries, especially these European countries. So, problems of developing countries, that means which are still under development, like India. It is a developing country moving more towards developed nation. Okay. So what are the problems? Developing countries face the following problems. Rapid growth of population. Now we all know this is one of our problems. Then unemployment due to less development of secondary and tertiary sector. Now we know the primary sector is the agriculture that is well developed in our country. But There is less of secondary and tertiary uh, sector development, and that is why it has led to unemployment in the country. Then poor standards of living and malnutrition due to lack of financial resources. Because of the lack of financial resources, there are people living below the proper standards. Then mismanagement of agricultural resources, we all know that. Then slow growth of industrial sector. There's very less growth of development in the field of industries, setting up of new industries, etc. And that is why the nation is facing the problem of being called a developing country. And problem of developed countries. That means what are the problems of those countries which have already developed? Let us see. Long span of life due to high life expectancy, which increases older people in population. Now, see how mean, but then it is true because of a good standard of living with good advanced medical facilities. There are a lot of old people in the country, and that developed country faces a lot of people who are old in the population. Then number two, small workforce due to the improved as a standard of education. Children remain longer at school and join the workforce later. So now, because of the advanced school facilities, there are long studies and there are number of people taking up various professional courses. So there are more standard education which is imparted, and because of which children are more into school and there is less workforce in the country. Okay. Then number three, the agricultural sector suffers adversely because of the non-availability of workforce in village, as most of the people move towards cities for better opportunities. Now agriculture suffers because most of the people prefer urban life. Number four, expansion of slums in urban areas. Now people from villages shifting to urban areas, towns and cities. So obviously there would be slums. Slums are those houses built on huts and with meager means. Okay. Then last summing up, skilled, spirited, and hopeful young people endowed with a positive outlook are the future of any nation. We have large human resource in India. This human resource can be converted into qualitative and skillful resources by education. So we must be educated and provided skills and opportunities to become capable and productive in various fields. So they talk of India being a country where skilled labor could be attained by people being educated. If they look for, we have good human resources in India, that means good human power. All we need is to channelize it through skills and through education. With this, we come to an end of the chapter. I hope till here everything is clear.